How old's your daughter?
My daughter is 6. Actually, I have 5 kids.
Oh, wow.
And I have 4 boys. 6 years. 4 boys in 6 years.
Oh my goodness.
The oldest is
bless you.
21. And the youngest is 15. And then I have 9 years and a daughter. So
Wow, that's amazing.
went back to diapers after they were grown up.
Oh, my gosh.
They must love her so much, though.
She ruled the house.
Yeah.
So did you notice, because I grew up with 2 brothers and then later 2 stepsisters, and I noticed a huge difference between the boy behavior and the girl behavior. How many of them have ADHD?
Well, I think
Speaking of.
3. And actually, the girl, I think, has ADHD.
Really?
We haven't tested her yet because she's young. She's 6. You usually just test around 6 or 7. I feel like she does. The other ones, 2 of them might have, but like very low, but they have it. And everyone promised me, you'll have a girl, she'll be calm, she'll be, she wouldn't climb on everything. Well, she's worse than the boys. I mean, she climb on everything. I can find her on the head of my refrigerator, but she's doing it wearing a tutu dress.
That's a great picture.
I love that.
Well, so that kind of brings me into MindTension and this new test. And you kind of touched upon that too, that at a certain age you can't even test for it. And I know that in the United States, at least in the West, there's an overdiagnosis issue.
It's funny, because I think ADHD is one of these conditions that is at the same time overdiagnosed and underdiagnosed. And it's kind of a
So it's
paradox.
just wrong. Like people are just wrong on all counts.
People are just wrong and people are afraid. I mean, you have this notion, and it's half right, that if you go with your child to be diagnosed for ADHD, if you only suspect, it's like 99% they'll say, yes, this is what they have, and they'll medicate you. And parents are afraid of it. Parents say, we are not sure we want to medicate him.
not
We're
my
not
parents.
sure this is what he have. We think, but we want to be sure. And the feel. So from one hand, almost everyone that gets with a suspicion for being ADHD is being diagnosed with ADHD.
Do you think that they're...
And the other end, there are people that don't come in. Also, girls are less diagnosed because they don't have the hyperactivity a lot of time in their
Right. They just have like
symptoms.
different markers to look for.
So they're not interrupting the teacher. So the teacher is not
Right.
complaining. So it's kind of fall between the chairs.
Yeah, because again, I'm thinking back, I think one of my favorite TED Talks, it's like probably one of the most watched talks
Okay.
that they have is Sir Ken Robinson. He's a educational expert, and he did a lot of research on, people who become hyper successful, but how they became hyper successful, how they realized their genius and their creative genius specifically. And he's involved in dance companies and all these things. And he tells a story about how he spoke to the choreographer who choreographed Cats.
Okay.
And how when she was a little girl, she was taken in to a psychiatrist because they couldn't control her in class. And the psychiatrist, to his credit, said, there's nothing wrong with her. She's just a dancer.
Okay. Well, yeah. My eldest was diagnosed with dyslexia, etc. And one of his therapists said, if we'll put in the first grade and second grade and third grade elementary school, if we replace all the chairs with physio balls so the kids can bounce on them when they listen, we'll reduce the medication rates dramatically. Now, I don't know if she's right, but there is something about, it's very, very complex to diagnose because kids are energetic.
Right.
And kids are moving.
Yeah.
And they need you to be really interesting. Otherwise, they look the other direction.
Yeah.
And of course, if you have ADHD, it's more, but all kids do it. So you need to have a precise way to diagnose. And the way you diagnose today, it's very, very subjective, okay? You start with questionnaires. Now, questionnaires means you ask someone how this child is doing. And we have these 2 amazing examples from our clinical trial. We had one girl that both parents filled the questionnaire for, okay? And in one, father and mother. And in one questionnaire, she has ADHD, and the other, she doesn't. No.
Weird.
Who's
Wow.
right? Because it's very much of perspective or of how you see her behavior.
Yeah.
So this is one thing, and the other one was a mother that filled up the questionnaire on her daughter, and it didn't come. We didn't get it in our system, so we asked her to do it again. When she got in, we got it. So we had two versions: same questionnaire, same mother, same child, 5 days apart, two different questionnaires. So it's like it's so subjective. You ask the teacher to fill a questionnaire. Which
Well,
one?
and like, what did they eat that morning? How much sleep did they get?
Yeah, how did your child react? I was acting in this specific morning, not the whole month. You ask them to feel like on general, not just for this one day, but we're all human. And then you go to a psychiatrist or neurologist or a pediatrician. 85% of the diagnosis in the US is done by pediatricians, not psychiatrists or neurologists.
Wow.
And then you sit with this doctor. Now, he sits with you for half an hour, 2 hours. So again, and it depends on how he is this day. Does he have a headache or not? And on the child, does your child come tired and hungry
Right.
or not? So it's very subjective. So a few years ago, lots of years ago, it was obvious that you need something else. And the CPT, computerized test, was invented. TOVA, MOXO, Qubitech, which made a change, made a difference. But they also have like a subjectivity in them because you need to see something, you need to understand it to make a decision and press a button. So if you're an 8-year-old child tired of your parents taking you again and again to another doctor and another doctor, and you just don't want to participate in the game
Right.
again, you know when you need to press a button, but you don't.
Well, and I feel like there's also, going back to what we were saying before, this almost a prevalence of people who want to push you through the system, maybe because the doctors themselves are a bit overworked. I know in my own experience, I was given ADHD medication at a pretty young age. And I remember even as a kid telling my parents, I said, that guy just met me. Like, what does he know?
Exactly, and I don't really think they're overwhelmed as much as they have these tools that are not sufficient. I mean, doctors want to be good at what they do. They are good at what they do. They want to give a precise diagnosis. They want to help. They want to give you medication if you need it. Someone in my neighborhood, in my kibbutz, said, I don't want to take my child to be diagnosed because I don't want to give him these drugs that alter his mind. And I said, if your child were diabetic and we'll say he needs insulin, you'll give it to him, right? And he say, of course. And I say, okay, so if he really have ADHD, it means that the transmitters, the neurons in his mind are working differently than the way they should. I don't know, better or worse, but differently. So this medication only help him concentrate and do the things that he's supposed to do. The same way insulin help his pancreas. So he say, yeah, but if he has diabetes, we know, we test his blood, we see it. And with ADHD, how can we be sure? And I think this is the main question. How can we be sure? And this is, attention is a physiological trait. We should test for it as a physiological trait. I shouldn't be asking all these people how the attention level. I should test for it. I shouldn't ask the teacher, the parents, the child. Press a button. I'm asking him to perform the test. I'm measuring part his attention and part his motivation to do it.
Actually, serious. Amazing conversations from Israel, all topics considered, with Aaron Poris and Hannah Rifkin.
All our shows and podcasts available online on our website and on all podcast platforms. Search Audioversity.